Okay, Jeannie, what is most important?
Well, I heard that question, but I'm not sure that that one elicits anything because what's important is entirely dependent on what story each person is in. So I don't know that I identify it, but at this time of my life, what I have been looking on, the story I've been looking at everything with is a story of connection between people, pretty much. And connections is a very broad word, but that's kind of the way I've been looking at things and the kind of stories.
At least two other people have said that.
Yeah?
Making connections with people.
Yeah. Well, it came up I've been working with a nonprofit in Oregon, which actually I have to do most of the work remotely, called Villages. And they're for seniors. And the idea is they talk about people who continue to live in their own homes and get to be able to have more of a sense of community and help from each other and from other people, from volunteers and stuff. But it tends to be just the process of developing a new organization is much more important than really what the outcome will be, because I might not even be living in Portland. I probably won't be owning a home. I won't probably be a renter. And I'm conscious now of not being able to do everything, maintain a house. We have to have all these helpers in to do all this stuff. So that part, that idea of people, especially needing younger people or more stronger people to help with things is all there, but it's the thing about when you develop a new organization, just that process highlights people making connections, making community. But the goal is supposed to be when it starts up, that the particular neighborhood actually starts up later this year. The goal is connection, but it's the process of doing it that makes connection and community. And so the idea of volunteering, doing something that's a volunteer thing is part of that. And so it was an interesting circle, but people talk about it as what needs to happen to make that organization work is a sense of community. And it's not just a mechanical thing of hiring people. It's first to become social. So if people start with social connections, then they make all the other interdependencies. And that idea of interdependency and the fact that that's not dependency, there's something balanced about it. That's kind of part of what connection means right now to me.
I tend to summarize, and maybe I do that too often.
Oh, tell me what you got.
That sounds like involvement and interaction is a part of connecting with people.
Yes. It's because it's not conscious, but it leads to a sense of helping someone and being helped, and it becomes natural participation in community life.
Yeah. I've actually spoken to, I think it was a social worker, that I had noticed that I enjoy helping people even though I can't quite help myself. So I think what I'm doing is I'm helping people in order to learn how to help myself.
But in the meantime, are people helping each other? Because each of us has certain skills. For example, I'm volunteering for this organization, and what do I know how to do? Well, I'm a writer. I worked my lifetime as a writer, technical writer, but whatever. And so I help by volunteering to write. It's something I can do. I'm not so much.
The yawns are not boredom on my part. This barrel chest I've had all my life, I just have trouble breathing. So
you gotta breathe. Yeah.
The yawning is not boredom.
It fills you with oxygen. Oh, yeah. So it's sort of like it takes everybody, and people do contribute what they can and take what they need. And so community has become more important to me over time, I guess, because I think I kind of naturally started out as a more self-sufficient loner type person.
A well-defined individual.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe not so much well-defined as an individual.
That's right. I was lucky the time and place I grew up that allowed me to, while being kind of a loner type of person, it allowed me to be myself, I think. And I feel fortunate that way. I've always been encouraged to be myself. But the funny thing is I think I've always been attracted to people who are otherness. Something about it attracts me.
The being different from you.
Yes, the feeling that people have of being different in some way. For example, the other night, I got fascinated watching this, I saw this news show of somebody who died and that's really interesting. He was an activist in San Francisco, because I grew up near San Francisco, in the 70s, and so these guys who were gay and started gay activism, and this became important because my brother got married a few years ago to a man, and the familyness of that. They're the dominant, I guess, people who play the dominant parent roles in our extended family. And so I appreciated that. My God, if they couldn't get married. And so I saw this history, and I got fascinated by this show. This miniseries was on, I guess, in February. I hadn't heard about it, but since one of the principals in that had died, it was in the news, and I saw this, and it was just every evening this week I've been watching it. This is really fat. Not only is it history of a time, started with, of course it came to the present time, but it started with this history in San Francisco at a time when I was living there. So it was that personal that way. But I think part of what it was is otherness, just watching that process of otherness getting accepted in a way.
That wasn't Harvey Milk, was it?
Harvey Milk has a place in this story because he was a supervisor. He had been elected supervisor in San Francisco. So one of the things in this story was a bunch of activists, not really about him, but one of the things they do is work on his election in the Castro. And so I stayed with my brother this Christmas, and they took me to the Gay Men's Chorus, which is a very famous San Francisco singing group, but they have this Christmas show each time. And so two friends of theirs who were also a married couple sing in that, and so it was just a rare time when I was just part of this different community of these guys who get together for holidays, and so there's a whole bunch of gay guys and their friends all on the streets of San Francisco in front of this Castro Theater. I don't know how much history you know about gay rights or whatever. They were in front of this theater, had been in their community, and I thought, oh, okay, I'm part of this too. This is cool. Something that might have scared me off in the past a little bit. So I guess I realized also that anything that's other, the other connection you and I have is Death Cafe, right? So I went to but I haven't been to ours much, in the one that you go to, but I've gone in Portland. And to several of them. And I think, I don't know, there was some conversation at one of those is like about, well, why are you interested in this topic? I go, oh, it's just fascinating me, really fascinating. And the experience I had in Sacramento was, wow, this is the most life-loving group, because people have asked me, well, why would you be interested in something so morbid, like death? And I go, gosh, it doesn't seem like that to me. It seems so uplifting somehow. guess I was thinking that like my fascination with this TV thing I was watching, streaming thing I was watching, that it's looking at the other side of something. So if you look at something, you're looking down on it. Okay, we're looking at life, right? Looking at life. Well, what's under? What's on the underside? Oh, death. Oh,
And
wow, cool. Ooh. So, to me, everything has a shadow side, and I'm always fascinated by the other side
yes, yes.
of anything, and it's because it makes it palpable, real.
I do the same thing with math and science.
Yeah.
When they teach me a rule that obviously has some kind of polarity, I go, well, then the opposite must be the opposite, or there must be some kind of relation. How do I turn this around and learn from that as well? So, yeah, I understand that.
So, to me, I look at the shadow side of anything as well, and I'm as inspired by that as by the dominant side of it. And it doesn't feel like, because the shadow, we think of it as the badness of something, the shadow, the negative. And I don't feel negative about, because things become whole for me, something I could feel and would be real. That is that feeling that ties together those things I was talking about.
In terms of connecting with people.
No, I was talking about looking, having seen this show about gay rights, the history from San Francisco, and how inspired I was by this story, and then the Death Cafe, looking at death as well as life and how much it made life real and meaningful to me.
So a part of connecting with it is, in some cases, analyzing it.
Well, I don't know. I am very analytical. But actually putting different viewpoints together makes...
Yes.
It's analytical. It's also kind of almost touch-oriented. It has to do with touch.
This reminds me of the ink blot tests that people do.
Yeah.
They say when an engineer looks at an ink blot, he might describe one thing, but then he'll chop it up into pieces and say, well, this is, the wings of the butterfly, and this is its antenna, and this is its legs. They'll analyze it and piece it out and put it back together.
Yeah.
So that's that kind of analytical, you don't see a door leaning against the wall, you see a door with a shadow and that there's things behind it, another door. You don't just see what's in front of you. So yeah, I appreciate that too.
That it's not just what seems to be there, but all the rest of it that you don't see at first or know at first. Like, you can't see a white door unless there's some dark to make the outline of it. How do you see a white door unless there's darkness? To make an edge, to make a boundary or something. So I'm analytical, I guess, in putting different sides of something together, all together. Put it in one out of many. So my answer to another of your questions is, what's this stuff about religion? It's all about oneness.
Well, the question on religion, which I guess we'll just get to the next one, unless you're not satisfied with your most important.
Well, I'm just spieling along, following a train of thought.
That's perfect.
I'm not trying to...
That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah. So go ahead. What were you saying?
So the religion question is, what is your history with religion?
Oh, well, the history is good.
And at what point or points did you decide it was and or was not for you?
Well, I guess when someone says religion, they're talking about a belief system.
Sure.
Or a system behind something that is rather inchoate, and to me, that's my whole life. That's felt limited. But when I was young, I went to a Catholic school, and my parents were Catholic, and so I was very involved in the story, in the whole, because I had nuns for teachers. And at first I didn't like it. The first thing I had gone to kindergarten when I was 5. And since I was a kind of quiet, shy kid, kindergarten was a big opening, a social connection that I had been the oldest or the only child up until that point with my parents, and kind of quiet. And so I didn't have a lot of friends, but I went to kindergarten. It was an amazing opening, and so expansive, and people were so understanding and just opened my horizons. And then you go to this elementary school, I guess the elementary schools, and it felt a little bit closed down to me. But I could get into the stories, and I could really try to follow along the thing. Like, I remember you prepared for one of the things you did, like maybe when you were 7 or so, like you prepared for this ceremony. What do they call it? Confirmation or something? I remember being really into it. I loved to just do what, follow along, and so on. I was a follower, But, it just felt like there was more that I wasn't getting, and that there was this kind of narrowing of life, and something seemed odd about that to me. But anyhow, I did that, went to that school until halfway through 5th. I think I finished 4th grade. No, finished 5th grade. And because my family was moving, that was the end of that. We moved to Miami, Florida, where then I started, what they called middle school. You started in 6th grade. No, you started in 7th grade. So I went to an elementary school for a year in 6th grade there. But so there had been this connection, this really immersion somehow in this religious thing. And I was fine. That was enough for me. And it was sort of like, because growing up in the 50s, I guess there were kind of moral dichotomies. Things you were, religion was like what you're not supposed to get into. There's something dangerous about sex and free thinking, or all kinds of, opinions can be moral or not kind of stuff. But since I was a thinker, I was fascinated by outre thoughts or whatever. So that kind of, I guess, was this feeling of wanting to expand and so on. But I still liked the stories. And I began to realize when I compared religions that I had gotten this Catholicism from my mother, who was Sicilian, and what her people had done was take only the feminine from Catholicism. I mean, they followed along the beliefs and the strictures of things, but in a funny way, they had substituted a woman figure for a male figure. They were devoted to the female figure, the Mary. You know what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. You know yeah. This was kind of interesting to me. So, but I guess in that sense of rebellion, I grew up in the San Francisco area. I graduated from high school in 1967. Remember the Summer of Love was supposed to be then?
I was born in 69.
You were born in 69. Well, you have heard history, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, it's, there was a big dichotomy going on. And I went to college in San Jose, which is near San Francisco. You know what I mean? So, I became like a free thinker and rejected a lot of political stuff as well as religious stuff and so on. But the outcome of all of this, I think, was that I didn't react negatively to any religious thing anymore at all. I was more like, it just keeps opening wider and wider. Different religions and different beliefs, and the sense that you don't need beliefs. And I guess it took years and years and years before I started hearing enough stories to realize that it was there was the mythology, that was one of the things that religion did. It was this whole mythology, and then there's other religions and other mythologies, but all these mythologies are getting at something that's not about beliefs or even one particular story. And so now, I guess since my late 20s, I guess to me that religion is all about getting closer to oneness, the sense of oneness of all. So it wasn't until I met, I was taking a class or something, and somebody said to me, well, if you're interested in empowering other people, I was working as a facilitator for a class I was taking of other people's self-discovery, whatever, and if you're interested in empowering other people, you should meet this lady named Jeanie Houston. And so I went to a workshop she was doing, and then I went to and this was like, by the time I was, I'd been out of college, I was in my late 20s, and she was starting this program that became like a graduate school for me. It was a 3-year program, and most of the people were older than me, they were from all over the world, and she sort of codified what was going on, gave me words for this, and that was there's a level of existence like, the physical. And then there's the social, the people together. And then there's the psychological, and above that, the spiritual level. She gave me words for that, but it's like the psychological or something is kind of like mythology. It's all the stories we tell. Because the stories have meaning. We tell stories to make meaning. And then there's this other level where instead of all these individual little minds, we're all trying to feel this sense of oneness of the universe. So that to me became, oh, gosh, here's all these religions, and I never met one that I didn't get something from. I have never met a religion that to me wasn't inspiring in some way. And it may be something I take that's different from it. I was in New York City because this graduate program met one summer in upstate New York. And we went to New York City. And so I'd never been there before. And we went to this, which museum is it? I don't know. But I can't remember exactly. It's a big museum, and it had a whole wing of a building on Islamic art. Okay, and what did I know about Islam? But I read something and said, gee, there's this stricture in Islam that you don't make art from the human body. It's all these nature shapes and symbolism. You never make art from the human form or anything human. Oh, this is weird. But, when I looked at the art, okay, and I really got a lot out of that, and somehow it became something. Not that I could put any words to it or know any belief system about it, but it became something really interesting to me. So I always took something from every religion I met. And to me, there are a bunch of myths of every kind. But the essence is this, this web through which we cannot fall through. That I feel like I have this understanding of oneness that becomes, it's always going to contain me. It's a web of existence or reality or consciousness that's, it's always more and more expansive and more containing as well. So that to me, I love all the individual stories, but I always make that's where I always go with them. Like, well, what's death? I don't know. Maybe it's where space-time isn't there anymore. Maybe it's that moment that you let go of space-time, and so it's totally infinite. But again, so you see, it's always going to be a oneness you can always count on. So, and that's what I think people are trying to do, become part of oneness.
I'm trying to think if I can add or get any more content by asking any more questions, but I think that's pretty well covered. I'm just explaining the pause in my thought process.
Yeah.
I have been noticing how animated you are when you speak this way. That's something that people have noted about me. Maybe even in like an interview process.
Yeah.
They're asking me what I want to do with the future. I'm like, oh, well, I really like this idea. And they're like, wow, I really like the way you tell that story. They go, do you notice that, how much you're into telling this? You see your hands moving. So that I guess it implies passion on the topic, and that's just a good thing.
Well, it's sort of like I get into the story of things. My daughter she's the only one who will sometimes tell me the truth about things, and I tell stories, maybe it's because of the age I'm getting, I tell stories about the past. And just because I also love stories, the whole idea of mythology and story, it's more, but I'm going to set that aside for now. But she says, God, you keep telling the same stories, repeating the same stories. Oh, thanks for telling me, Amelia, but, somehow I just really, there's something about that story that really means something to me. So that's getting lost in a story. But this whole idea of stories lately, I've been telling myself, stories are whatever you tell yourself is going on, right? And we're always telling ourselves some story. And I realize in the last few years how my reality is not necessarily the same story somebody else is telling. And then this feeling I have about politics, it's become different in the last several years. Instead of, oh, this person has this opinion, that person has that opinion. There's these dichotomies in stories, right? And so you could feel for the first time this thing about religion. If someone's like there's these people who are talking about religions as if they're totally out of reality or something. And belief systems about politics become so. It's like it's not just a symbolic. These things aren't just symbolic stories anymore. But they have belief systems so wide they can encompass reality. And I read this article recently about trying to explain some of the politics in the U.S. right now about, there's people, why do people believe all that? Well, from their perspective, why do we believe what we believe? And it's like we don't have, politically, our structure isn't more, you have these people tell you the truth. Like when I was a kid, you listened to the news on television and, it was a what do you call it, a paradigm that was the same, people could agree, these are opinions and that's what reality is. So we had these authorities that we looked up to, and now, communication and people can write to each other on the internet and all this. So there's just this expansion of what people can tell each other that we don't have to just listen to TV anymore. And so, but somehow this process of having different belief systems it goes really far. And so I would say, why do people don't believe, say, in things that science says, or why can't they agree that's a fact, or why can't... And then somebody wrote this article recently about Well, this thing about fact checking is that we we can't know actually what's, all these things we think are real, they're really not. We had to take somebody's word for it. I mean, I can't confirm the earth is flat. I can't confirm, say this is caused by that. So take some scientific fact or something. I had to take it from somebody. And so everybody else is doing that too. But, people who are, I guess, education or literacy or somehow becomes like, well, you get selective about who you believe, right? You kind of, compare, well, who says this and who says, oh, well, how reliable, you have this, you've worked out this system of, well, like science does, if there's enough papers on this, well, maybe, until someone changes the paradigm and suddenly there isn't flat anymore. And the first paper I ever wrote in college was about paradigm shift, because that fascinates me. How we can all believe something and then suddenly it's a different story. So I appreciate story, and I don't think we know anything other than the story we're telling ourselves about this. And then I found out that they're teaching psychology different than when I learned it. As my daughter went to junior college or community college, and she had this beginning psychology textbook, and there was something in there, there's a chapter in there, this is something I'd never heard of when I was a kid, and that was that, how does our human perception work? I can't remember the term for it that they use. I wish I could, because I'm really interested in researching this more. That the human perception, we do not have sense. Our sense perceptions are not observations like this little fact and that little fact. The human brain, it does not collect different factual observations. The human brain, within milliseconds of any sensory impression, creates a story. And it's so fast it's not conscious. It's milliseconds. And it's the human way of processing perception.
And you realize you have no way of confirming this, it just makes sense to you.
For some reason they're teaching that. But yeah, it fits for me. It fits my story because there is nothing but story. In other words, and the reason this becomes really interesting is that there are people for whom this doesn't work, and I'll get to that in a minute. But they're saying that the human brain supplies a story, a context. So we understand a perception only in a context, and we're guessing when we listen to, say a person listens to someone else, and they're trying to think, well, what's that person trying to tell me? So our brains do this story. Well, this is about this and not about that, and then that doesn't fit what they say. So the brain supplies a different one, and so we never. It's like the blind. The man who's blind, the blind man and the elephant, what context, what story do you come to it with? And the human brain can actually do this shifting, constant shifting of, okay, so here's a possible story that explains it. And so now I understand that we only think in stories. We don't think in observations or facts, we think in story. But we can keep refining our story to fit new observations and alternative things we hear and see.
Yeah, and that's a breathing thing, not a boredom thing.
Yep.
Are you satisfied with your answer for religion and how you were involved with it? Or whether it was a fit for you?
Yes, I said that I believe in all religions, and that it's really all about oneness and not differences or distinctions, but we make our religions out of myths, stories that have the import of mythology.
Okay. If there's what in your life would someone look at you and say, wow, what a hero? And then, after that, if you could choose a superpower, what would you do?
One of the, I went to this 3-year program, and the main teacher was Jean Houston, and she talks about these sort of core stories or core myths of Western or thought or whatever, and one of them is Master of Two Worlds. And I think she was using the story of Odysseus. Whereas Odysseus goes off from Ithaca, I think he's from. He goes off and he has all these adventures. By the way, when I went to Sicily myself, which was one of the main Greek colonies originally, I saw this village that actually my grandmother's from, that my daughter and I were visiting, is on the coast, and there's this rock. It's really weird, but anyway, there's rock out there. We're supposed to be the I can't remember, Charybdis and Scylla, Charybdis or something, that he had to go through these rocks, Odysseus did, and the sirens were screaming, and he had to make it through without getting distracted. He actually saw those rocks. But anyhow, he goes off and has all these adventures, and he comes home. And he gets back into the situation at home where there's his wife has all these suitors, and he's trying to get accepted and to have a home, come back to, and he wants to have his wife back, but it's not necessarily going to work out that way. And but he eventually figures out how to integrate what he's come back to and what he's seeing out there. So he's supposedly he accomplished this Master of Two Worlds. Well, for me, the other world that I have had to encounter, probably because in my family there's been both aspects, is the world of autism. That is high function. Let's talk about high functioning autism. That actually is a different way of perceiving. And I've been studying it because I became convinced that my husband, what's strange about, I think this is what's going on. And eventually he had recently got a diagnosis of high functioning autism, along with a couple other things, but anyway. But before all this, this is what's going on. But not only that, and this is before I had any thoughts about him being different than me in any way, was my father's brother was always an outcast in the family. He tried to stay away from people. He wasn't comfortable with other people. And at one point, my parents were living in Rockland. John and I were living in Auburn. And also in Auburn, we found out that my uncle had this trailer, and this trailer park was right near the house we were renting. So we found out about that, but he didn't really want to have visitors. We would sometimes see him out walking, and he was available to talk sometimes. But he was just really tried to keep to himself. And he would, for long periods, not get in touch with anyone. And he was always a problem for my mom and dad because they were trying to integrate with the family. He wanted to stay away and so on. But anyhow, at some point, this was after John and I had moved here, I think it was, and my father had died already, quite a number of years ago. I got word that my uncle had died in Auburn. And I don't know how, but this was sometime after he died. And so the story was that he had had cancer, and because I went to the county and they told me this, he'd had cancer and he had been recovering in a nursing home. And so I was the responsible party, so I was supposed to do all this. So I went to his trailer, and also the attorney for the county told me, I said, well, gee, I don't really have the resources to deal with all of this, whatever his bills are, what he had, maybe hadn't paid his rent, or what do I do with his trailer, and all this stuff, and his bank account doesn't have much in it, and she gave me this legal advice. She says, you can abdicate, you don't have to do anything about this. He's already been cremated. That was taken care of. But here's the nurse. So I go to the nursing home and they said, gee, unfortunately, we really can't find any of his money. Then later I found out this nursing home was known for stealing from the people who'd been there. But there was I don't know, somebody gave me I think it was the county that gave me his checkbook, and I went there and there was $50 his account or something like that. And I go to his trailer, and there's a car there, right? And, an old Honda or something. And there's this trailer, so we go into this trailer. Now, I had been there once, and it was just very crowded. This old trailer, very crowded. So John and I go in and we look around, and there's all these drawers with all these little pieces of paper all over the thing. And I start looking at the papers, and they're aeronautical physics. They're really impressive. Quite a collection of little drawings and analysis and stuff, and it's familiar. And it dawns on both of him, my husband and I, that this is autism. This is the traditional train spotting or whatever kind of thing. It's more of the traditional image we have of people who are high-functioning autism, that they're into something and that's their main thing. But it was very impressive. He was quite... So, I began to understand that it wasn't that he was antisocial. It probably was hard for him to be around other people. He discovered that he had left a bank account for my daughter, and he had never really participated in the family, but he had this niece, and he left this little investment account for her. I talked to the guy who runs the trailer park, and I said, and the guy told me how many months' rent he owed, and I said, there's not much, and I said, and I was sort of implying to him that he could keep the trailer, but that's a hassle for him to get rid of it and everything like that. And he said, I'm a manager of a trailer park, and I've got a whole park full of people that don't want to be found. That's why they live here. He says, I'm used to this. Fine. And that's what the attorney had advised me to. Don't do anything if you can't handle all of this, because there's not money to do this. And so he eventually gave his blessing, and that was the last. I drove the car away and drove it for a little while, and gave it to my brother, and my brother ended up selling it. But anyway, so I didn't think that was right, but but I discovered the autism, and I think that was always hard for my dad, to grow up with this brother. So the reason I'm telling this story is that I'm familiar with autism from my family, and my little brother, who is 15 years younger than I think is also has what they call Asperger's, or high-functioning autism. He's never had to diagnose it, but he and I have talked about it, and that might be true, whatever. Anyhow, so it's something I'm comfortable with, and then I began to wonder about sort of strangenesses or differences between my husband and I. And so I checked with other people and started going to groups of meetings of people who, to try and understand what's going on. But what happened, about 5 years ago, John read this book, and he decided that he probably had autism, and maybe so did his uncle or brother or something like that, or high-functioning autism in some way. But only in the last year or two a year or so did he actually get a diagnosis. Anyway, but the ways that are different, his system of perception, the way he thinks, are different enough that this became an area where I really had to deal with or learn how to function somehow. Because the things that he and I have not been able to deal with, like this house that we should have sold 10 years ago, you could try to understand it through the fact that we didn't understand each other very well. So in a sense, I'm different than him. He thinks his perceptions are very different from mine. But it seemed familiar when he kind of went along with things. For so many years he would maybe see things differently, but he gave me the benefit of the doubt and went along with things, and he discovered autism, and it's like, wait a minute. Well, maybe other people should accommodate me too. So it was no longer that he was, so a lot of ways that he and I had not really understood each other very well were suddenly, oh my goodness. But he doesn't, give me the benefit of the doubt or follow my cues or whatever much anymore. But I really tried to understand how it was that we discovered, what I'm trying to say is we discovered we had been not communicating very well all these years. We misunderstood things about each other, and now it's becoming clearer. So in a sense, after that period of time, trying to figure out how do you navigate, now that you know what the differences are, it's not a very easy thing to do. So, in a sense, there is a huge dichotomy to try to keep head scratching about. And I guess in a way, and also in a way that the way other people understand, like my family understands my husband, it's like they go, oh, he's really weird. He seems different to a lot of other people or whatever, and so there's this kind of like, well, I sort of, some things I get and some things I don't, but it's like a big, huge difference in reality. So I feel like it was kind of natural for me to get together with him because I'm familiar with people who think that way in my family and so on. But it's really different than me. And in that sense, it's like having to be master two worlds. The world of people have no idea how anybody thinks like he does. And the other world of, he doesn't get me and I don't get him in a lot of ways. So it is sort of like two different stories about the same thing. For example, he does not do easily that thing about figuring out what context I'm in, that figuring out what the story is. Well, you said that, it must mean this, or kind of thing. So we realize that we don't always get each other. So. And I feel like it's required me to be a master of two worlds.
In several of these interviews, I began to notice a pattern.
Mm-hmm.
That the most important has to do with their hero self. And that,
what do you mean? I'm not following you.
Well, your most important is connecting with people.
Mm-hmm.
And your hero personality, you're describing not communicating with your own husband.
But the hero self is the one who manages to navigate this, and now is figuring out, like, what works for me now that he, in a sense, doesn't give me the benefit. What works for me now? Well, gee, if I could get rid of this house and not have to, if we didn't have to do all this cooperation about finances and the practicalities of life, God, we'd get along so much better because we could just appreciate what's different about each other. So in the sense, divorce is what's better for me. However, I still try to understand him. So the hero part of me is the one who can try to understand. But the reality is, it isn't exactly the most comfortable place for me. So what's good for me personally, individually, there might be a certain amount of distance. So the best self navigates that, right? But in a sense, the power is, if someone's living by a different story, I can appreciate that. I can catch on to it eventually, and okay. And use this in other aspects, not just my husband, right?
Right. But your hero self is overcoming a deficiency in what you find most important. Is that more clear?
Nope.
You're working.
No, be specific.
You're working hard to connect with him.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's most important to you.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But you're still having trouble with it, but that isn't making you quit.
No, but it's making me make some boundaries or separations, right? Yeah.
Well,
and I can use it to understand other differences with other people.
You're using it to grow.
Yeah, exactly.
So
not just to stay with him because we'll probably get more distant.
Right.
Yeah.
But the growth part, I don't think you're seeing this as a failure, but you're seeing this as, not the best success you were hoping for. But you're choosing to learn and appreciate from that imperfection. I'm not going to call it a mistake. I don't think it's a mistake.
Yeah, who knows?
Well,
I don't like what I didn't get all these years, and there's a lot of wasted effort between him and I. Him thinking, for example, I bought this house because, Jeannie, you like this house. Well, I didn't, but I thought because you told me we could fix it up to have our parents so big, we could have our, so there's just all this burden of misunderstanding. So that's unfortunate, but yeah, well.
I've shown you my tattoo of my dog. That's Andrea.
Oh, now I see it. That's a cute dog.
Yeah, she lived 17 and a half years.
Wow.
Everything I know about love, I've learned from her. And I used to just say that until my roommate's girlfriend said, well, what is it that you've learned?
Yeah.
And I was able to put it in words on the spot.
Yeah.
First of all, you do not reward bad behavior.
Uh-huh.
Because what you're doing is communicating them that bad behavior is acceptable and worthy of reward.
Okay.
Realizing that, the second most important thing about love is to communicate. And it doesn't matter if you share species. Because me and my dog, we had to find a way to communicate. If she wanted something, she would nose me in the leg or, make noise or get my attention somehow.
Uh-huh.
Then I would have to determine whether she's just, wanting too much, or if she really needs some water, or if she just wants to play and I'm in the mood, because a lot of time I'm not in the mood.
Right.
Brain tumor, migraine shit.
Right.
But
so you have to set some boundaries.
Those two things, do not reward bad behavior.
Yeah,
and find a way to communicate, even if you're a different species.
Uh-huh.
And I think you are exemplifying that.
You know what? You may be different species, but you are both mammals. And I'm starting to understand in doing this research into neuroscience. 'Cause that's what this whole thing about autism I got really fascinated. In that there's an aspect of mammalian heritage in the brain structures we inherited from that. And now just getting to know John's cat, it's like I'm starting to appreciate what it is that we have in common among mammals. So, so the pets we have that
like an ability to communicate somehow.
Oh, yeah, and it's not just communication. The ability to emotionally connect. In a sense, all mammals have the ability to put themselves emotionally in another person's shoes. Mammals have that ability to. They may not understand you're different. They may not get all the aspects of that, but there's some basic aspect of that is they can empathize emotionally. You can, and the mammals, only mammals can. Empathize emotionally with someone else. Like people say when their dogs or cats know what mood they're in and they accommodate to it and so on. That we all share that with mammals.
So I think we've gotten your real life hero-ness, whatever we want to call it, hero power. If you were in a movie, a comic, a cartoon, what would your power be?
The power to integrate differences. Opposites, to integrate opposites in a cartoon. I don't really know.
It's not like shooting lasers out your eyes, but I'm not sure how you could do that into a superpower.
Yeah, I don't know that they do this, have many characters that do this, but some science fiction has someone, like if you're, I don't see a lot of science fiction or read a lot, but I think that there's envoys to another, there's someone that gets sent into another world, another reality, an alien reality, and can make those connections. And first of all, try to figure out what's going on here, and then be accepted and be a go-between, an envoy.
The word empathy comes to mind. Does that sound like it describes what you're trying to say?
Yeah. But so the superpower, empathy is something we all have, but the superpower is to be able to do something about it. To get people together that, or to get through some dichotomy, to be able to find the commonality in some incompatibility.
So kind of a super diplomat, maybe?
Yeah, although I don't practice this, it's something that I'm trying to...
This is our imaginary world here.
Right, yeah. Right, so I can, if someone says to me, well, so-and-so did this horrible work, well, maybe they were thinking X, you know. This job I had once being a facilitator, it was this class that this woman was giving. It wasn't therapy. She was giving this class in which somebody who was having trouble with something in their lives, you would, to figure out what your programming was, or what programming you were just trying to live out and your life wasn't functioning, she would help people go back and try to figure out what sort of thing they were told about, this is what you got to do to be loved, that maybe was a little off, you know, and figure out where it came from, and then learn how to, it's something that was a negative in your life, okay, so it was negative for someone to say, you know, this is bad about you, you got to be this, you know, or something, so there's usually some hurt and anger involved in some of this stuff, but that by really getting into it, you could cross over into a different way of functioning. You could actually believe you are lovable, that you could actually, you know, claim your own feelings, that you could actually, you know, learn this by just from having confronted this, gee, I was taught this, and maybe it's not the only way. Maybe I'd like to be a different way. How could I do this? It's a way of facing something that's kind of negative, something you're really hurt by or mad about or something, and accept it, become part of it. To have that, the opposite also be part of you. So that I was really good at that, at facilitating people. Like, well, she gave people a lot of homework to do, but every person would do this homework by writing something about, some exercises to write about their life, or what's going on right now and what's went on when they were little. And so they would write this homework, and each people who had taken the class before could be facilitators, in that they would be the ones to read the person's homework and write back to them and encourage them. They'd be the one to know the story. The teacher would teach the lectures and stuff, and you know, but each person doing research on themselves. It was like self-educating themselves. We were the facilitators, and I really was good at that, helping people see other sides of themselves. And there's an example.
I got a little bit lost in my own thoughts. I wanted to add to something that you had said. I don't recall exactly what you said that triggered it, but here's my thoughts about free will and responsibility. Free will, in my opinion, definitely exists. If you don't believe it exists, then you're right. You don't have free will. People are telling you what to do. So I believe I have free will, but I also believe that there are instances where I do not have free will. And I figure the difference between them is the stuff that I have free will about, I can claim responsibility for. The things I don't have free will about, I cannot be responsible for. I cannot be responsible for having a brain tumor. I am responsible for whom I become afterwards. And that helps me deal with it. Does that relate to what you were talking about? Because those were my thoughts when you were talking.
What I appreciate about that, or what I'm seeing about that, is who you become in the sense of choosing a way to join with it, a way
to accept it.
Not only accept it, you can, and we have to accept what's different. We come up with that, and we have to accept, yeah, you're this brain tumor, and I'm this person, and it hurts. So there's an acceptance, but in addition to just accepting, there's this and there's this, and seeing what you're encountering, there's a way to find something to combine. There's a way to accommodate by doing something differently. That is, you're not saying, well, gee, because of this brain tumor, and I'm going to have people leave me alone because this is painful. I notice that you will say something, and gee, I really need, and maybe you will be a little reticent, but then when the time comes to explain it or say, gee, I need this environment to be different in this way. Or I could go with that if we can do this, or we can, we'll accommodate. So accommodating isn't just a one-sided thing. It's changing yourself and changing something else that's not you as well. Because there's an opening, there's some choices, there's some ways that you affect other things and other people.
Some summary words that bounced in my head while you were just talking was acceptance and maybe even ownership. Taking ownership of my life. From a part, coming from a part that I can't be responsible for and moving it to a part that I am responsible for.
That is what you were describing to me about you. Yeah. Okay, back to story. The thing is that what I experience is because of the stories I'm telling myself. So in a sense, I'm responsible for not seeing it a different way if I choose to see it this way. And knowing that somebody else could be, humans are very good at seeing each other's reality, but there could be somebody telling themselves a different story, and I need to respect that. That's the story they choose to tell themselves. Okay, fine, because I'm choosing to tell myself this story about what's going on. But sometimes I have some flexibility to maybe encounter something and some growth to, oh, wow, here's another outlook that I can reach. And because we can enter into a new dialectic, this and the shadow of it, and make something out of it that's a combination, and then we use that and encounter something else different than us. So that, we grow a little at a time, but we choose the stories we tell ourselves, and we can change some of it.
One philosophical observation I've had is that everything we do and say and even feel and think is by choice.
We're responsible for our feelings and our reactions.
Whether we're aware of it or not.
Yeah. I mean, becoming more aware helps.
Yeah.
Because then you get some options. Yeah.
So is that it for your superhero ability? How would you summarize your superhero ability?
It's being able to see new paradigms, because I can appreciate try to see both and. My superpower ability is both and, not either or, but both and, of this and this and this and this. Both coexist. I can accept them. They may be in conflict or whatever. They may be parallel paths, but I can
seeing a bigger picture, maybe.
Yes, seeing a bigger picture.
Okay.
Insight or something. And maybe I can describe sometimes to someone else, like, oh, well, here's a way, here's another story about that. What happens when you hear this story about that reality? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that it's superhero, but it's very satisfying, not only to get the story and live inside this other story that's other people's experiences, but then tell your own and like, wow. And everybody else is just thinking that other are in their characters are their own stories, and when I find out that, oh, that's what's going on there.
And this also seems related to what's most important, connecting with people, because you have to be able to connect with people in order to accomplish this superpower.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, but connecting isn't easy for me, because it means
for you or anyone
encountering. Because I'm not very good at just assuming that somebody else is the same as me. And I think that's how we mostly connect. Oh, I have this in common. It's really easy. Let's go. Of course you believe. Of course you agree with me. Of course you like this and I like this. But I think that process is a little more complex for me.
Or maybe you have low self-esteem.
It could be, but it's also the sense of remember I was telling you, I identify with people who feel other. And is not mainstream in some way. I was looking at some very divergent view of something.
Nonconformist.
Right.
So are you satisfied with all your superhero answers?
Well, I don't know that I got too much into superhero, but that having been able to visit another world and appreciate it is satisfying.
Final question. Would you like to ask me any questions?
I don't know what to ask, but I find that I can't assume anything about you.
Then the easiest way is to ask and find out.
Yeah, what do I want to find out?
I'm a Scorpio.
So am I. I'm November 20th, but that's near the end
What?
of Scorpios. November 20th.
That's my birthday.
It is your birthday? It's a very unusual birthday, actually.
Okay.
Seems like less people are born on November 20th than any other date. I don't know why. But yeah, November 20th.
Well, November is 9 months after Valentine's Day.
Is that what happened?
That's what I think.
I was born on my parents' first anniversary to the day. But here's the thing, that I do not really know or get a good immediate read on what you think or react or feel. But you
Really?
seem so open to what, like you seem to accept anything anybody tells you is going on with them. That's unusual.
That's not to the point of gullibility, it's a point of acceptance.
Right. That is, you're not going to react negatively to anybody telling you. I have no idea if any of the things I talked about you feel like you would you would react to. And I have no idea what you're sensitive to or would react to. I have no idea. But, like it seems like, hey, whatever, that's okay. That you seem open to hearing what's going on with someone and keeping your reaction to yourself and not being defensive or whatever.
I do not keep anything to myself because I need to probe further usually. Sometimes I've interrupted people and say, oh, wait a minute, you're going to have to explain this part because I think I need to get it before you continue. Or I didn't do that with you, but I have asked you follow-up questions.
Right. Yeah, you seem to get them now, though other people say, that's really kind of way out there. Not in the sense of being unusual, in the sense of, what the hell are you talking about? That's so theoretical. So analytical. It's just like, oh, okay. So what makes me wonder is, what do you react negatively to of what other people's
Behavior.
Behavior.
Negative behavior.
Mm-hmm.
If you were picking your nose and flicking it at me, I would react negatively.
Uh-huh.
But I don't think that's an aberrancy. I think anyone would do that.
Right.
I don't see any of your behaviors even comparable to picking it and flinging it. Okay?
Well, I threw up all over your stuff at your house.
What's that?
I threw up all over your stuff at your house.
Yeah, but you got sick. Big deal. Like I said, the same thing happened to me like a week before. Literally, I was walking through the house and just, I'm like, oh, that's not a good thing.
Oh, my daughter was just so, when she heard about that, says, well, obviously, then you shouldn't have done
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't hear you react defensively or negatively to things, unless something's physically uncomfortable and you just tell people what it is. So that's unusual. And so I don't ask. I don't try to figure out if something's going to bother him. I tend to just be that or do that, and then you'll tell me if it matters to you, kind of thing.
So does that mean you're comfortable around me?
No.
Really?
No, it doesn't. But it means that whatever is fine. I mean, if you're uncomfortable or comfortable, it'll be okay either way, because you'll be responsible for your
You're talking
own.
about my comfort. I'm talking about your comfort.
Okay. Yeah, but in a sense, I was telling the truth, and here's what I mean. I'm not comfortable, and I'm not uncomfortable. It's like, okay, it is. And Thomas is probably pretty uncomfortable a lot of the time. I mean, I get that from the things you say about your physical reactions to things. But I had the feeling when I was, for example, when I was talking about the story of the gay rights movement, about my brother being married to a man, and da-da-da-da. I have no idea, and it didn't even occur to me to wonder whether or not you're sensitive about gay people. Some people are. And it's like, well, it didn't matter to me, and I don't usually respond that way.
It only matters if they want my involvement. You know, if they want me to behave in a particular way,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's involved with them directly or indirectly.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you wanted me to clean your toilets just because we know each other, I would say, no, I don't even clean my own toilets. You know, if you want me to clean your toilet, then there's got to be something more in it for me. The behavior, it's not that I don't care about people, it's just that, you know, it doesn't really affect my life. A friend of mine in high school came out to me in my college years. I'm like, well, I don't know how this affects me. I guess you already know that I am not gay, and if you wanted my ass, I probably would have found out by now. So I don't see any reason to really change anything. The topics of conversation shifted, that's for sure, because it was a different thing for me. Unfortunately, the week after we found out I had a tumor, I never saw him again. Because he was a selfish prick. And he was a drug addict and just everything. He had lots of problems, but they didn't negatively affect me directly. You know, he'd knock on my window at 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning with his drunk friend, and I'd tell him, all right, I'll take you home, you know, and talk to him all the way home. You know, I don't mind being there for someone, especially if their behavior directly with me is non-negative. You know, it doesn't even have to be positive.
That's a pretty low bar.
It is. I'm very open to people as long as they don't, you know, flick boogers at me or whatever it is I find repulsive.
But who do you want to spend more time with? Isn't there a difference to some people who aren't being mean to you want to spend time with and some you don't?
Yeah, I would love to spend way more time with the friends that I've known for so long and would still like to do the things we used to do together. But we're old and we got families and jobs and other goals and other people around us to do those very same activities. And so I'm just going to have to miss them and grow up a little bit. But that doesn't mean I need to give up on any other dreams I have, you know, like going to Denmark.
Denmark, that's right. I remember Denmark.
That's
Why Denmark?
I wrote up a little thing. I haven't put it on video yet. But I was sick and tired of my doctors telling me two things. One, they asked me if I have a plan to kill myself. My answer is like, no. Why do I need a plan? I'm here because I don't want to kill myself. I'm here because I want to get better.
Yeah.
The second thing they tell me, after usually handing me stacks of paperwork that are outdated with no valid information on it whatsoever, is they're not going to help me. So they're basically asking me to reconsider my answer to the first question. And my answer is, fuck you. I don't have a plan to kill myself. I have a plan to live, and now I'm going to go do it. I'm going to do it outside this country because all it wants me to do is kill myself. Because it's more profitable to them. They don't have to spend money, time, or energy if they're not going to help me. That's a very negative perspective on my part. To me, that is very unhealthy. To me, that means I need to get the fuck out of here. I did that with my family. I haven't spoken to them since I was 30 or 31. And I'm not healthy by any means, but I'm healthier without them. And I will be healthier without this medical system, if you can call it that, because that's not what it is. They don't care at all about the patients. You know, I've got this extensive history, and every time I go in to see a new doctor, they say, hi, what can I do for you today? It's like, well, I need you to assess my health based off of my medical records. Oh, well, I see you did this, that, yeah, that was about a year ago. You have no idea why I'm here. You have no idea about my history, and you do not give a flying fuck who or what I am, so I am getting the fuck out of here. So
how's it different in Denmark?
I shook the magic 8-ball.
Uh-huh.
I said, all right, Internet, which country in the world takes care of its citizens the best?
Aha. A better health system. Does that mean they can help you more, or does it mean
They're
they'll
ranked.
try things?
They're ranked as the best health care. Their neighbors, Norway and Sweden, are
Right.
2 and 3.
Yes, I'm aware of that.
And Denmark has the happiest people on the planet.
How's it going? Time out. Yes, come in. What?
Pause.
Oh,
Pause. Yeah, they need to split.
okay.
Okay.
All right, I'm coming out. Okay.
So I think his thing paused.
I can stop this and we can continue on, but we're still asking questions that you would like to ask me.
Yeah, I still have some, I'm hearing and I do still have questions.
Go do what you want and we'll come back and restart this.
Okay.